She broke into my apartment while I was sleeping. I woke up to someone standing in my living room, and it was my girlfriend. Look, I know how that sounds, like I should be happy or relieved or whatever, but I wasn't. I was confused, then uncomfortable, and then honestly, kind of angry, because she wasn't supposed to be there. She didn't have a key. She'd never had a key. And the fact that she was standing there in my apartment while I'd been asleep felt like a line had been crossed that I didn't even know needed to be drawn. Let me back up. 6 months ago, I met Sarah at a friend's birthday party. She's 35, I'm 27, and honestly, at first I thought the age gap might be a thing, but it wasn't. She was funny, confident, had her life together. On her own place, good job, the whole deal. We hit it off immediately. She had this way of making me feel seen, you know? Like she actually listened when I talked about my day, or my hobbies, or whatever. The first few months were great. We'd go out to dinner, she'd come over, and we'd watch movies. We'd stay up talking until stupid hours of the morning. It felt easy. She started staying over more frequently around month 3, which was fine. I liked having her around. She'd bring stuff over, leave a toothbrush, some clothes, normal relationship stuff. I have a roommate, Dave, and he was cool with it. He'd met her a few times, said she seemed nice, and as long as we weren't being obnoxious, he didn't care. My apartment isn't huge, 2 bedrooms, decent living room, nothing fancy, but it's mine. Well, ours. Mine and Dave's. And that mattered to me. Here's the thing, though, and I didn't really clock this as weird at the time. Sarah started leaving more and more stuff. At first, it was practical: shampoo, a change of clothes for the morning. Then it became drawers full of her things. A whole section of my closet. Her laptop charger permanently plugged in by my bed. Her favorite coffee mug in the cabinet. And look, I didn't mind. I actually thought it was kind of sweet that she felt comfortable enough to do that. But looking back now, I think that was the first test. The first little push to see how much space she could occupy. The first actual red flag, and I hate that I'm only seeing this now, came about 4 months in. We were having dinner at her place, and she brought up sharing our locations on our phones. Just for safety, she said, smiling over her wine glass. That way, if something happens to either of us, we know where the other one is. I remember feeling this weird knot in my stomach. I'm not doing anything shady. I'm not cheating. I'm not going anywhere I shouldn't be. But the idea of someone always knowing where I am felt suffocating. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that. She got quiet. Then she said, "It's just interesting that you'd be so against it if you have nothing to hide." That phrase, nothing to hide, like privacy is only for people with secrets. I tried to explain that it wasn't about hiding anything. It was about having space to just exist without being tracked. She dropped it that night, but I could tell she wasn't happy. The second thing happened maybe 3 weeks later. We were at my place, and she asked, super casually, like she was asking to borrow a phone charger, if I could get her a copy of my apartment key. "Just in case I can't reach you," she said. "Or if there's an emergency." I said no. Not rudely, just no. I explained that I have a roommate, so it's not just my decision to make, and honestly, even if I lived alone, I wasn't ready for that. She did not take it well. She got this look on her face, like I'd personally insulted her. "Even my friends think it's weird that I don't have a key to your place after all this time," she said. "We basically live together half the week. What's the big deal?" I remember sitting there thinking, do we though? Do we basically live together? Because to me, living together means a conscious decision that 2 people make together. It means talking about bills and chores and whose name is on the lease. It doesn't mean one person slowly moving into the other person's space until it becomes the default. I tried to say this, maybe not as clearly as I'm saying it now, but she kept pushing. "What are you so worried about? I'm going to show up randomly?" I wouldn't do that. I just want to know I can get in if something happens. And when I still said no, she got upset. She said I was being paranoid and that she was starting to feel like I didn't trust her, which made me feel like garbage because I do trust her, or I thought I did. But trust doesn't mean erasing all boundaries, right? We had an actual fight about it. She left early that night, barely said goodbye. The next day, she texted me like nothing had happened, but there was this weird tension for a few days. Eventually, things went back to normal, or what I thought was normal. But she kept making these little comments. Like if I said I needed a night to myself, she'd say, "Well, My stuff is already there, so I'll just come by and grab it. Which of course turned into her coming over and staying. Or if I didn't text her back within an hour, she'd send 3 or 4 follow-ups. Everything okay? You there? Hello. It started to feel less like concern and more like surveillance. The third thing, and this is where I really should have paid attention, was about a week before the key incident. I'd had a long day at work, and I texted her saying I was going to just crash at home, order some food, and play video games. Alone. I even said, I need a solo night to recharge. She texted back, okay, no problem, with a smiley face. I thought that was the end of it. 2 hours later, she shows up at my door with takeout. I figured you shouldn't eat alone, she said, breezing past me into the apartment. I just stood there, holding the door, trying to figure out if I was being unreasonable for being annoyed. She stayed the whole night. I barely said 10 words. I kept thinking, did she actually not understand what I meant? Or did she just decide it didn't matter? So now we get to the actual incident. Last Tuesday, I gotten home from work absolutely exhausted. I've been pulling extra hours on a project, and I was running on maybe 4 hours of sleep from the night before. I texted Sarah around 6 p.m. saying I was going to take a nap and I'd talk to her later. She sent back a thumbs up. I got home, changed into sweats, set an alarm for 8 p.m. and crashed on my bed. My phone was on silent, which I do sometimes when I really need to sleep, and I was out cold. I woke up around 9:30 p.m. to the sound of my front door closing. Not opening, closing, which meant someone had already come in. My brain was foggy from sleep, and for a second, I thought maybe Dave had come home. But then I heard heels on the hardwood floor. I came out of my bedroom, and there she was. Sarah, standing in my living room, her purse still on her shoulder, looking at me like I'd done something wrong. You didn't answer your phone, she said. Not, hey, sorry for barging in, or I was worried so I came to check on you. Just, you didn't answer your phone, like that was explanation enough. I stood there, still half asleep, trying to piece together what was happening. How did you get in here? I used the spare key, the one under the mat outside. I felt my stomach drop. Yeah, I keep a spare key under the mat. I've used it a handful of times when I've locked myself out. She'd seen me use it once, maybe twice. I never told her it was there for her. I never told her she could use it. And now she was in my apartment, without my permission, because I didn't answer my phone. Sarah, what are you doing here? She looked genuinely confused by the question. I called you 5 times. I texted you. You said you'd talk to me later, and then you just went silent. I got worried, so I came to check on you. I was sleeping. I didn't know that. So you just let yourself into my apartment? What was I supposed to do? You weren't answering. What if something had happened to you? I could feel this anger building in my chest. Not the explosive kind, but the slow, creeping kind that makes your hands shake. You wait. You assume I'm fine. You don't break into my apartment. I didn't break in. I used the key. A key I never gave you permission to use. She set her purse down on the couch, which somehow made it worse. Like she was settling in. You're being dramatic. I was worried about you. Normal couples do this. They check on each other. Normal couples respect boundaries. That's when her face changed. She went from defensive to frustrated to something that looked almost like pity. Boundaries? We've been together for 6 months. We see each other every day. My stuff is here. I met your friends. You've met mine. What boundaries are you even talking about? I didn't know how to explain it in a way she'd understand. Because to her, closeness meant access. It meant erasing the lines between your life and mine until they're the same life. But to me, closeness is something different. It's choosing to share parts of yourself, not having them taken. The boundary where you don't enter my home without permission, I said, trying to keep my voice level. That's the boundary I'm talking about. She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh my God, you sound insane right now. Do you hear yourself? I was worried about you, and you're acting like I committed a crime. You violated my privacy. I checked on my boyfriend. We went back and forth like this for probably 20 minutes. Her insisting that she hadn't done anything wrong, that I was overreacting, that this is what people do in relationships. Me try to explain that just because you're dating someone doesn't mean you get to override their consent. At one point she said, you know what? Maybe you're just not ready for a serious relationship. Maybe you're too immature to understand what it means to let someone in. That one hurt. because part of me wondered if she was right. Am I being weird about this? Is this just what relationships look like, and I'm too inexperienced or avoiding to handle it? I'm dwujiste shudme. I've had relationships before, but nothing super serious. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I'm sabotaging something good because I can't handle intimacy. But then I thought about my parents. They've been married for 30 years, and my dad still knocks before entering my mom's office when she's working from home. I thought about my best friend and his wife. They have their own hobbies, their own friends, their own space within their shared life. I thought about every healthy relationship I'd ever seen, and none of them looked like this. None of them looked like one person slowly eroding the other person's autonomy under the guise of love. Sarah eventually left that night, but not before making sure I knew she thought I was being ridiculous. She said we talk about this when you're thinking more clearly, which felt incredibly condescending. I didn't sleep well. I kept replaying the whole thing, trying to figure out if I was the problem. The next day, I called my older sister. She's been with her partner for 8 years, and I trust her judgment. I told her everything: the location sharing request, the key conversation, the stuff accumulating at my place, and finally the incident with her letting herself in. There was this long pause, and then she said, "That's not normal. That's controlling. And the fact that she's making you feel crazy for having boundaries is a huge red flag." Hearing someone else say it out loud made something click. I wasn't being unreasonable. I wasn't being avoidant or immature. I was being ignored. My no didn't mean anything to her. Every time I tried to establish a boundary, she found a way around it or made me feel bad for having it in the first place. I started thinking about all the little moments I'd brushed off. The way she'd pout if I made plans without her. The way she'd forget when I said I needed space and show up anyway. The way she'd frame everything as being about her feelings, her worry, her needs, her comfort, without ever seeming to consider mine. It wasn't that she was malicious exactly. It's that she genuinely seemed to believe that her feelings justified overriding my boundaries. I talked to Dave about it too. He'd been pretty quiet about the whole relationship, but when I asked him directly what he thought, he didn't hold back. "Dude, she's here all the time. I don't mind, but it's gotten to the point where it feels like she lives here and just doesn't pay rent. And the key thing? That's messed up. I didn't even know she knew where the spare was. What if I'd been walking around in my boxers or something when she came in? That's not cool." He was right. It wasn't just my space she'd invaded. It was Dave's too. And I'd been so caught up in trying to figure out if my feelings were valid that I hadn't even considered how this affected him. I decided I needed to have a serious conversation with Sarah. Not a fight, not an argument, but a calm, clear conversation about what I needed from the relationship and what I wasn't willing to compromise on. I texted her asking if we could meet up and talk. She responded immediately with, "Is this about the key thing? Because I still think you're overreacting, but fine, we can talk." Great start. We met at a coffee shop near her place. Neutral territory. I'd actually rehearsed what I wanted to say, written it down, even because I knew she had a way of derailing conversations and making me feel like I was the one in the wrong. I started with, "I need you to hear me out on this without interrupting." She nodded, but I could already see the defensiveness in her eyes. "When you used the spare key to enter my apartment without my permission, that crossed a line for me. It's not about whether you were worried or whether your intentions were good. It's about the fact that I didn't consent to you being there. And this isn't the first time I've felt like my boundaries aren't being respected. I've said no to sharing locations. I've said no to giving you a key. I've asked for nights alone, and you've shown up anyway. Every time I try to set a boundary, it feels like you either ignore it or make me feel guilty for having it." She started to say something, but I held up my hand. "Please, just let me finish. I care about you. I really do. But I need space to exist as my own person, not just as your boyfriend. I need to know that when I say no, it means something. And right now, it doesn't feel like it does." There was silence for a moment. Then she said, very calmly, "Are you breaking up with me?" "I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if we can make this work." By listing all the ways I've apparently failed as a girlfriend? By telling you what I need. She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You know what I think? I think you're scared. I think you're scared of actually being in a relationship, so you're inventing problems. The location sharing, the key, the alone time. These aren't real issues. These are excuses to keep me at arm's length. That's not fair, isn't it? You say you care about me, but you won't let me fully into your life. You want all the benefits of a relationship without any of the intimacy or vulnerability. That's not how this works. I felt that familiar doubt creeping back in. Was she right? Was I just scared? But then I remembered what my sister said. And I thought about how I felt when I woke up to find Sarah in my apartment. Not safe, not loved, but violated. And I realized that no amount of self-doubt could change the fact that my feelings mattered. My boundaries mattered. I think we want different things, I said finally. You want someone who's available all the time, who shares everything, who doesn't need space. And I can't be that person. I don't want to be that person. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out if she could say something to change my mind. Finally, she said, "So that's it? You're just giving up?" "I'm not giving up. I'm recognizing that we're not compatible." She stood up, grabbed her bag, and said, "You're going to regret this. You're going to realize that no one is going to put up with your issues like I have." And then she left. I sat there for a while, nursing my coffee, feeling this weird mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I'd finally stood up for myself. Sadness because I'd really wanted this to work. I'd wanted her to hear me and understand and be willing to meet me halfway. But she couldn't, or wouldn't. I went home and immediately moved the spare key. Put it somewhere she'd never think to look. Changed the locks the next day, just to be safe. Gathered up all her stuff and boxed it up. She texted me a few times over the next week. First, angry messages about how I was immature and couldn't handle a real relationship. Then sad messages about how much she missed me. Then angry again when I didn't respond the way she wanted. I kept my replies short and factual. "You can pick up your things this weekend. Let me know what time works." When she came to get her stuff, she tried one more time, stood in my doorway and said, "I still don't understand why you're doing this. We were good together. We wanted different things," I said, "and that's okay. But I can't be in a relationship where my boundaries aren't respected." She looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. And that's when I knew, with absolute certainty, that I'd made the right call. Because she genuinely didn't understand. To her, boundaries were obstacles, walls to be broken down, proof that someone wasn't fully committed. After she left, I called my sister again, told her everything. She said, "I'm proud of you. That couldn't have been easy." It wasn't, but it was necessary. I've spent the last few weeks thinking a lot about what happened, about why I let it go on as long as I did, about why I kept questioning my own instincts even when they were screaming at me that something was wrong. And I think it comes down to this. We're taught that love means sacrifice, that if you really care about someone, you compromise. You meet them halfway. You make it work. But there's a difference between compromise and erasure. Compromise is I like action movies and you like rom-coms, so we alternate. Erasure is I don't want you to have any preferences I'm not a part of. I talked to some friends about it too. Most of them agreed that what Sarah did was out of line. But a couple of them said things like, well, 6 months is long enough to have a key, or if you weren't doing anything wrong, why did it bother you so much? And I realized that this mindset, that privacy equals secrecy, is way more common than I thought. That a lot of people genuinely believe that once you're in a relationship, you owe your partner complete access to every part of your life. I don't believe that. I think you can love someone and still need space. I think you can trust someone and still value your privacy. I think you can be committed and still maintain your individuality. Looking back, I wish I'd ended things after the first or second red flag. The location sharing request. The key conversation. I wish I hadn't let it get to the point where she felt entitled enough to let herself into my home. But I also know that I learned something important. My boundaries are not negotiable. They're not starting points for debate. They're lines that I draw because I know what I need to feel safe and respected, and anyone who can't honor that isn't the right person for me. Someone on Reddit, because yeah, I posted about this to get other perspectives, said something that really stuck with me. They said, the right person won't make you feel crazy for having standards. And that's it, isn't it? Sarah made me feel crazy. She made me question whether wanting basic privacy and autonomy was reasonable. She made me feel like I was the problem for not wanting to be absorbed into her life. The right person wouldn't do that. The right person would hear, "I need some space tonight," and say, "No problem, talk tomorrow." The right person would hear, "I'm not ready to share locations," and say, "I understand." The right person would never, ever use a key they weren't given permission to use, no matter how worried they were. I'm not closed off to relationships. I'm not afraid of intimacy. I'm just done pretending that invasion is the same thing as closeness. I'm done letting people guilt me into giving up pieces of myself to prove I care. I'm done. And honestly, I feel lighter than I have in months. My apartment is mine again. My time is mine again. My life is mine again. I can sleep with my phone on silent without worrying that someone's going to treat it like an emergency. I can make plans alone without having to justify why I don't want company. I can just exist. That's not avoidant. That's not immature. That's healthy. So yeah, that's the story. My girlfriend let herself into my apartment, and I ended the relationship. Some people think I overreacted. Some people think I should have seen it coming sooner. But I know I did the right thing. Because at the end of the day, I have to live with myself. And I'd rather be alone and at peace than in a relationship where I'm constantly fighting to maintain my sense of self. If you're in a situation like this, if someone in your life is pushing your boundaries and making you feel guilty for having them, trust your gut. You're not being difficult. You're not being paranoid. You're being human. And you deserve to be with someone who understands that.